We're live. So, good afternoon, everyone. I can see a few of you guys have been waiting. I've got Charlotte in the chat there saying hello. Um, so, this afternoon is episode 46, and we are joined by Mike. Mike, do you want to give
Well,
yourself a quick introduction?
I'm an engagement officer for Learning and Skills, which looks after some of the education contracts in Sunderland and providers.
Yeah.
I'm relatively new in the role. I've been here 6 months, three of which have been in sort of lockdown.
Yeah. The timing's impeccable, mine, I've got to say. And one thing I will say as well, I've been looking back through all the guests we've had. You've probably got the coolest name, I think. I think Mike Law is like the most striking name we've had on so
Oh,
far.
when I was a kid at school, my science teacher always used to call me Mike Law, attorney at law.
Yeah, it
He
fits quite
invent-
well, definitely.
yeah, he just invented a little show for me. So
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of like Judge Dredd, is what I was thinking.
yeah,
If you could like, I am the law, sort of thing. That'd be
sadly I have said that. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
That is the only benefit to having the name.
It's good. It's good. Plus, it's memorable. You know, when you've got a name like Hatham, people are just like, "What does that even mean?" Like,
I was I was
it's just letters.
I was pulled over years ago for speeding when I was young and daft, and had my driver's license over, and the police officer just went, "Mr. Law," as in breaking,
Oh, oh
and
yes.
I've never put that down.
That's a proper like head teacher sort of remark. That one, I don't like that. It's like,
I think I was like 18 or 19 at the
yeah,
time.
it's a bit of a cringe one, that, isn't
There's nothing you can do.
it? Just try and laugh at the joke, and hopefully you don't get like a big fine. That's about
That,
it,
that was
really.
that was the game plan.
Yeah, flattery. I like it. So just for the guys listening in, obviously you mentioned what your job title was. What sort of stuff does that entail?
Really, it's two things. It's processing paperwork, a lot of administration, just to make sure people who are enrolled on courses funded by the council are Sunderland residents. They're not overqualified for a qualification, things of that nature. But it's also sort of supporting providers to be compliant with people like Ofsted, to make sure they're ready for observations, make sure they're ticking every box for those people, make sure they're compliant with all funding regulations from both the government and the ESFA. So that's the sort of the core of the role, making sure providers of education in Sunderland are compliant.
Yeah. So I mean, you guys will the learners that we've got, in the chat and stuff today will recognise the paperwork side of it when you
Yes.
mentioned the bureaucracy, the administration work that goes in. This is the funding providing, so that this is where the money comes from, and that paperwork, is part of that, which it's a massively important part of what we do. And I take it it's the same for a lot of the guys that you have sort of contact with. That's some of their primary income as well.
Yeah, without doubt.
So yeah, that this is sort of putting a face to a name almost, if you like. And we appreciate you coming on as well, just to say that. So thanks.
No worries.
So obviously you mentioned, you sort of alluded to it in the. Did you say 6 months and 3 of them have been in lockdown?
Lockdown.
Yeah. So how's that? How have you had to adapt then with that happening?
It's really strange because there's been a few changes in my life. So I've got a newborn.
Yeah.
I've got a child that's 6 weeks old.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much, sir. So there's been a benefit for that. It's been, I get to see more of them than I would had I still been at work. But it's difficult. I think it's really difficult because we take for granted working in an office where you can just look over a desk and there's someone who's got the answer that you're looking for, someone who can support you.
Yeah.
And now it's very much like we're doing now. We're having to log on and use Zoom or Teams or what have you to try and get in contact, use email a lot more, and sort of a task that may take sometimes a couple of minutes might take that much longer, where you're trying to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
So there's that element to it.
Do you feel, or did you feel, maybe it's our first, that was a little bit more, I don't think lonely is the right word, but you're a little bit more isolated in terms
Yeah,
of
I
the way
think
you're working?
yeah, you fit the nail on the head. It's a little strange. I like to have the divide between work and home. And like I said, although there's a benefit for me, I get to spend more time with my son. I like walking out of an office on a Friday afternoon and thinking, right, now it's home time. Now it's the end of work. There's a clear divide, and I think you lose that working from home to an extent.
Like the sort of boundaries are a little bit more blurred in terms of
Yeah,
you roll out of bed and into your office and it's you're not changed out your pajamas, you haven't had your breakfast, you're eating your breakfast in front of your laptop and
I've put a shirt on for you today, Haytham. I hope you appreciate that.
well yeah we appreciate
It's
it.
it's 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 yeah, it's strange. Like I'm pretty much suit and tie every day of the week.
Yeah,
So they've stayed in the cupboard.
yeah. How's that been? How's the adjustment of not wearing a suit been?
Well, it's just strange. It's just getting used to it. I'll be happier now. I think more things are opening up. I'm happier. I'm trying to get a bit more active because I've struggled in my weight anyway. But I think staying at home and not being able to sort of have a wander around on your lunch break, or go to Subway for a salad and things. I think that's had a knock-on effect as well. But
Definitely.
On the whole, in terms of work, they were already planning for the future. So they had Microsoft 365 and they'd started training. They were getting people ready to switch to a system that allowed you to work from home more effectively.
Yeah.
But when you're just thrown into it, I think that's quite a difficult sort of change.
Yeah, I think technology's been massively important for us as well. Obviously, we're doing a stream on YouTube now, and we sort of try to pivot as quickly as we could. But even then, nothing's perfect, as you'll have found out yourself. Things like we've had issues with all of it, with Zoom, with Google Drive, with whatever it is we've used. It's not an issue with the servers. It's just like you say, people need to be trained and know exactly how to do it and the best way to use it and things as well. So I think that's been a big adjustment for us. With that in mind, though, how do you think you've coped with that, like that new experience?
In terms of work, I think it's been fine. I mean, I come from an education background. I was in a college in the Northeast for about a decade, and I was always pushing to go more and more online, and there should be more use of resources that we're paying for, and a lot of staff aren't using.
Yeah.
So I was quite comfortable in terms of, right, here's what we're going to use, here's how we share documents, here's it's going to make life a little bit easier. So I was all for it, and I think I've coped pretty well on that side of things. I think the big issue that caught everyone out is suddenly everyone has to make that switch at the same time, and they're at different levels of preparedness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing we find a bit more generally. Speaking from like a media savvy point of view, is you'll find a lot of people say, be it the benefits or the banking or whatever it is, like they've been sort of forced to make a big jump, and there's a massive like skills gap as well. So I think this might be a little bit, not specifically for you guys, but I think a lot of employers are probably looking at it now and thinking we need to get our staff trained up, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we're still working from I'm in the office today, but a lot of the guys are still working from home for the foreseeable future. I think it is at the minute. Are you guys sort of veering towards the same thing, do you think?
I think until further notice, working from home is the preferred option, just to limit contact between people, I think.
Of course. Yeah, so I mean, I take it no one's in the office at the moment for you guys then?
Well, I work in the civic centre, so there's a handful of people in there. I popped in on Wednesday. I was there for a meeting.
Yeah.
But it's significantly reduced to the amount of people who would usually be there.
Yeah.
If you walked in there today, you'd struggle to bump into someone other than the person on reception.
Yeah. And even then, I imagine they're sort of like, whoa, when you come in, it's like 2 meters.
Well, I had to, because we're wearing masks now. I was wearing a mask and security don't recognise you, so
Yeah.
it's sort of question who you are.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I take you guys need your ID badges and stuff to get in somewhere like that. So how does that work?
At the minute, for the part of the site where I work, there's a security guard / receptionist.
Okay, so like on sort of your entrance and an exit, you sort of identify. That's fair enough. Yeah, because it's mandatory now as well, isn't it? In shops, masks and stuff now.
From today.
Yeah, I think because I know Daniel's been working on a video to go out. Mel's done a video on how to make your own little mask at home, which might be worth checking out for some of you guys. I'm just gonna have a quick check on the chat, make sure no one's asked any questions. But if you do have any questions for Mike, guys, give me a shout and I will ask. Lynn's just saying about the charging $4.99 of the bridges for some horrible ones. About the masks, I take it that was. Yeah.
I'm using a bandana or something somewhere because I'm not keen on.
It doesn't have to be a mask per se. It's a face covering, isn't it? That
yeah.
said. Yeah.
Bra, snood.
Yeah.
What have you?
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, like I say, guys, if you've got any questions for Mike, just give me a shout. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So yeah, we've asked, have you started going back to work? So do you think you'll stay at home as much as you can then, and just nip to the office when you have to?
I think that's a plan for the foreseeable. I'd like to flick the switch and say Corona's done and dusted, and we can all return and go back to the way things were. But I think it's not realistic.
Yeah.
And until people feel a little bit safer, I think it will be working from home, and like you say, the office on occasion for meetings or things that we can't do online as well.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you guys, I mean, previously, like when, we have a contract with you guys and we do a lot of the stuff, it's primarily over the phone, but email as well. And then it's normally a case of like submitting stuff right at the end is normally when we'd have any contact. But even then it's quite limited. So I don't, correct us if I'm wrong, but has it affected you guys working with providers that much?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was strange because obviously I've just been talking to Dan before this went on the air.
Yeah.
And it's because I've had a lot of contact with people like Dan just through the phone. So it's strange that I now know someone relatively well and have never seen their face until today. Similar to you, good Salsa, we've had a few email exchanges.
Yeah.
But we've never actually crossed paths until today.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, then it's good, I suppose, because we might not have had a conversation like this otherwise. So under the circumstances, probably a good thing. So yeah, that's sort of the next question. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit about like a previous role at a college and using like your online resources and stuff. Is that something you guys are looking to do now at FACL going forward in terms of how do I put it, like utilizing the online aspect of it?
In terms of providers, I mean, we're there at Learning Skills now because we have to. Working from home is sort of forced hand.
Yeah.
In terms of providers, something we've definitely encouraged to try and take risks and do more remote learning. And if there's ever and there's no good side of COVID, there's not.
Yeah.
But it has pushed people out of their comfort zone. It has forced people to try new things. And I go back to my previous employer. I remember a few years ago doing Teams training for the first time, and it was pitched as an alternative to email. And well, it's factually true. It's an instant messaging service. That's not all it can do. And they were really sort of limited in terms of the training they've got. And now actually they're using this video conferencing, they're sharing documents in an IM fashion. More and more people are using smart devices rather than laptops. So they're becoming a little bit more portable and a little bit more confident with how to use sort of Android and iPhone in sessions. So there's all sorts of benefits now that are coming out that weren't discussed a year ago.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the technology's been out there for God knows how many years really. When you think, I mean, Skype's been around since I can remember. But what I would say is it's got a lot better. Like the likes of Zoom is so much easier than like the early iterations of Skype, which you'll probably come into contact with being in organisations like that. It was just it was a mess. You'd open it up and it'd lag your computer to death, and then it would crash and send 8 reports about it crashing, and then open back up and you'd be signed in and not available and not very user friendly. But I think especially like I say, Zoom, and then they've got like free alternatives like Google Meet as well, which I don't know if you've used at all.
Not yet.
So it's tied into your Google account. It's a really handy one. It's a little bit better for like a one-to-one thing than like place of a FaceTime call, but you can do group meetings on it. It's pretty good. So we've had a question from Sue, and she asks, has the funding pattern changed since lockdown? Which I assume she means in terms of when we get it, not how much.
No, the dates are still the same. Things are changing all the time in terms of delivery, because it was only last week they announced that adults were allowed to have face-to-face delivery from September.
Yeah.
That previously was told adults in colleges and other education wasn't going to happen. So I think that the funding remains the same. The funding is still on the same sort of dates. So it runs, I think, start of term is the 1st of August officially.
Yeah.
So there's no change in terms of those things. What's allowed and what the expectations are, they're changing week by week.
That was going to be my follow-up to that, was going to be, do you guys have any, and I was going to say concrete guidelines, but I don't think there's any such thing exists at the moment.
No.
But do you have any rough guidelines on face-to-face delivery that you've been given yet, or is it just like you say?
If you go on the government website and look at adult delivery, it lists the expectations there in terms of a comprehensive risk assessment.
Yeah.
And that's really what determines whether face-to-face delivery is realistic or not, because it gets down to having reduced class sizes. They want to see some form of social distancing by a metre or so of people with smaller classes.
I think it's 1.3, isn't it? That they've said is the minimum safe distance.
But even practical things like the bathroom facilities, how are they going to be sort of maintained? Does it need another member of staff? Because they're trying to obviously reduce transmission of a virus as much as possible. Are you doing temperatures when people come onto the premises? Just practical things, trying to reduce transmission. So that's going to change depending on what the future holds. If it starts improving, I imagine some of those guidelines will be relaxed.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I got an email yesterday. I'm not particularly fussed about going back in a hurry, but like things like the gym sort of opening back up.
Yeah,
and that if it seems like there's a little bit of a different approach in every single sector, in terms of what's allowed indoors and what's not. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out about teaching.
The last one, personally for me, the last thing to open up should have been bars. I know people are struggling with restaurants and things and not having an income.
Yeah.
If you're a little bit inebriated, it's harder to follow rules and regulations. It just is.
Yeah. I mean, I'll level with you. I've been out twice now to the pubs.
How did you find it?
I was talking to Daniel about it on one of the streams, and it was bizarre. But we went on a Sunday, so it wasn't quite as busy. But the bar staff in there were saying on the Saturday night they'd had to throw like 6 or 7 people out because they'd repeatedly asked them to, you're too close together to this other table, and you aren't following the one-way system and stuff. And I think you're right. I think once someone's had a couple of drinks, that's sometimes going to be it. For social distance is not going to exist anymore.
I guarantee everyone's trying, but they've forgot things at times. I went to see my sister and being a garden a few weeks ago, and her partner just instinctively went out to sort of hug my wife, and because he hasn't seen her in so long. Do you know what I mean? And then that's exactly it's human nature, and people forget. And if you throw a drink into that as well, your reaction time is slow.
Yeah, your reaction time and your decision making, as we all probably know, goes out the window. So yeah, I think with the teaching thing, I don't know how face-to-face delivery is gonna, work particularly. I think it's definitely possible. What kind of impact do you think it's gonna have on like the training providers if they're gonna have to do reduced classes?
It depends on the type of training provider, and it depends on the institution. I think it's one of those things. It's unfair, but larger providers will be less affected because they'll have more space. They can move people out a little bit more. They'll have more staff in terms of like the practical things and bathrooms and what have you, and they'll be able to have a steady flow of people. So even staggering times, you start at 9 and you start at 10, and have less people in at the same time. I think if you're a smaller provider. We have a lot of providers who work sort of in the environment and outside, and that's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah.
We have providers who work in people's residences, where again they're under a slightly different rule because they're in their own home.
Yeah.
So it get their home learning. So with smaller providers, your mileage varies massively in terms of how they're going to be affected. But if you have relatively small classrooms and limited bathroom facilities, and with other bits and pieces as well, it's going to be difficult to get it cost effective to get people back into those providers.
That's it, because that was the point that Sue was making as a follow up to our question. She was just saying the number of training companies, like there seems to be fewer of them around and advertising at the minute, and I think that's probably why, Sue. To be honest, I think it's due to them. It's probably not cost effective for them to be putting courses on yet.
Yeah, there may be a few of them as well who are using the furlough scheme as well, so they may not be back to work 100%.
Possibly, yeah, that is true. So I mean, we'll stand by. We've been quite lucky in a way. I say lucky, but the guys have put a lot of work into it as well. That we've managed to develop a digital provision. Obviously, with your guys' help and guidance as well, over what we can and can't do, and we've had pots of funding from different providers as well, which is great. And we'll continue to do that. But I know a lot of people aren't in the same position, which is also something. It's not particularly, like Sue says, great, because there are opportunities there that are going to go by the wayside now, which is a shame. But hopefully, like you were saying, the guidance will get to a point where it's reasonable for smaller providers as well. So are you guys just going off the government sort of website at the moment? They're not putting out anything to you guys, like say the SFA or anything, on putting any.
I mean, the SFA sort of talked. They were the people who were talking about the guidelines for face-to-face delivery and also funding change, the lack of funding change, and how it's going to stay the same and be consistent. But we're just looking every day to see what's coming next.
Yeah.
Because the hope is, in the perfect world, that November we're back to normal. I think that's the official line.
Yeah.
But we're also seeing smaller lockdowns introduced in sort of communities, and Leicester being shut down for a little while.
Yeah. It's so that was one of the other things I did have a little note on. So like, I take it you guys are just gonna respond to that as and when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was a case of, when Sunderland, for example, went into a local lockdown, it would be putting the comms out to say, look, the courses are being suspended for the time being.
Well, I think term one for the majority of providers is going to be digital.
Yeah.
They're taking, because especially with the late change to face-to-face delivery, a lot of people are geared up for sort of online delivery, and it's just the safer bet at this moment in time, and we're still playing a guessing game, really.
Yeah, like I say, I'm quite hopeful, and there's various industries opening back up. I think teaching's a weird one, because when you actually think about it, there's a lot of layers to it. So obviously we work in the adult education sector, and you guys primarily, I know you do the family learning as well, but our contract is more adult learning based, and that seems to have a little bit of a different approach to like the schools, which I don't even know. Is it been a step return for the schools now? Are they doing certain year groups and stuff?
Currently, they've got certain year groups in, and they also follow in social distancing,
right?
Which is fine, but I'm not sure they want 100% return in September.
Okay.
So unless you double the amount of teachers and classrooms that you have, it's going to be unlikely that you'll be able to follow social distancing. I think bubbling is the way forward for them. That they're going to have different start times for different year groups, and different break times and different lunch times, and just try and avoid any sort of crossover. So I think year 7 might finish at 3 o'clock, year 8 finish at 20 past 3, etc.
Go down the same route of just reducing as much like contact as you possibly can. Yeah, it's fair enough, I suppose. So yeah, Sue was just saying. Hang on, I've just scrolled past it. I think she was saying thank you for the funding the cooking courses. I think that's what it was. Yeah, Dan just sent me the message, yeah. Sue was thanking him for funding the cooking sessions. So yeah, thanks to FACL for that one. I think they've gone down a hit. I don't know if you've managed to catch any of them ones.
Bits and pieces, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been a really popular one, which, by the way, we've got a couple of spaces on, I think, for Monday, if anyone wants to message Mel and get involved with that. So Lynn's just saying, you said yesterday that COVID cases have doubled in Sunderland, which is a bit scary as well. So yeah, I think for you guys, it's just a case of keeping an eye on that, like you were saying.
I find it difficult to keep track of COVID in Sunderland.
Yes.
I find it because I read that many different things. Like, Sunderland is in a much better position. The infection rate is low.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then the next day you read things like that. So I find it really difficult to know if we're getting better or worse. So
yeah.
I find it really tricky.
I think that just goes for the overall state of the country at the minute, to be honest. Like one day it's like, oh, it's going well, and then literally half an hour later it's on fire again. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. Cool. So yeah. So obviously we've talked a little bit about the COVID precautions and what effect they'll have. With that in mind, do you think that the online delivery is something we could maybe see as more of a permanent, more accessible solution?
I think a lot of providers have developed really interesting resources and really sort of popular and useful resources. And again, I go back to that thing of coming out of your comfort zone. There's a lot of providers who've delivered in a certain way before, and they've tried something new and it's worked.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely got a permanent place. That being said, I like being in a classroom when I was teaching. I like seeing people face to face, and I think that's for some courses that's an essential. And it'd be nice to see a return to, even if it's a hybrid model where you have so much online and so much face to face. I think that hopefully might be the way forward if things improve.
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually, and it's sort of one of the reasons we do that. We started the staying connected really was we don't want people to miss out on having a face-to-face interaction with someone. It's Lisa's done a bunch of stuff where the courses have been, so we've done some on YouTube, but Lisa's done a few where it's been Zoom based sessions as well, and a bunch of like screen sharing and showing each other the work and things like that. I think it's a massively vital part of especially learning. I think it makes it a little bit less robotic when you can see someone explaining it and you get the sort of social cues from the face, and when they're making a joke or when they're being serious or whatever they happen to be doing. It's a little bit easier to understand. I think I feel like that anyway, especially when I watch stuff when I'm trying to pick up new skills or whatever. Interesting. I wonder if you could expand a little bit on your hybrid model and what you meant by that.
I just think face-to-face delivery is really important. I used to teach English and politics, and I think the online solution offers so many good things. We're using online right now to communicate, have a podcast together, have a conversation. And we're both in Sunderland, but in different parts.
Yeah.
It's useful. If we turn this into a classroom, people change when they're on camera. And they're less likely, they may feel more uncomfortable asking questions or more uncomfortable raising controversial topics.
Yeah.
And I think if you're in a classroom and you feel a little bit safe and you don't feel someone's looking over your shoulder and you know the people in there because you've met them, you've interacted with them, you might throw out a question where you think, well, actually, I'm curious about this. A common one for me when I talk politics, you get into how laws are made and things of that nature, and loads of people talk about, it's going to be grim, but the death penalty.
Right.
And
capital punishment. Okay.
Yeah, capital punishment straight back. And then you take a little navigation down there and just have a conversation, say, well, when would you bring it in? And at what point? And then obviously go to murder and other things. So, well, what reason of guilt? Is it just when they're convicted of the different types? Do you get exemptions? What if someone admits to it, but there's extenuating circumstances? And it's those conversations where they start to get an appreciation of we don't live in a world of black and white. There's lots and lots of shades of grey. And I think there's, in different subjects, in different areas, there's all those different areas where someone might have a question asking either out of fear of controversy or sometimes just a lack of confidence in some respects.
Yeah.
They may not answer it where there's a video record and where people they've never met see it.
I think that is a really interesting point. It's sort of that open debate is a lot harder to have, especially, and granted, it's you are having a face-to-face interaction, but it's still on the internet. And I mean, Daniel talked again at length on the Wednesday shows about how like it's really difficult to have an opinion online without it seeming like you're either A, having a go, or B, or of a particular, say, political persuasion. So you could say one thing and someone could take it completely out of context.
Well, there's that element as well. If you're on social media and you have an opinion, you've got various parties who will retweet that and turn it into, if you're not with us, you're against us, and target something or other. But it's actually, well, I'm not disagreeing. I've just may have different thoughts on a particular topic.
Yeah, and there's no way you can put your views on a topic like anything, even just something as simple as like something as simple and basic as football. There's no way you could express your entire opinion in one tweet or one Facebook post. Like, it's just not going to happen. So when something is polarizing as like, say like something like the Black Lives Matter movement or, COVID-19, it's so controversial, and to have that opinion watered down into like 240 characters or whatever it is.
Well, Trump versus Biden is dominating it at the minute, isn't it? Trump versus Biden. And you there's people out there who may not like Trump, right, fine. There's people out there who may not like Joe Biden, fine. You get to vote at some point. If you're an American, you get to choose. You don't need. It doesn't mean anyone's wrong.
Yeah, But that's it as well. That's the other thing we talked about it quite a bit. There's something we sort of touched on, like confirmation bias a little bit, whereby you say something because that's the opinion and the stance you've took, and then you look for information to back that up, and you end up having a massive argument online, and that's sort of some of the stuff that you want to avoid. And I suppose that at some point that would be linked in with like Lisa's very good at doing the classroom based like British values discussions.
Yeah.
She's very good at like moderating them and making sure everyone gets heard. Whereas I think you're right. I think in like a Zoom based or like an online based scenario, it's a lot harder to maybe say what you think without you don't know how you're going to come across.
That's why in my head the sort of hybrid is if you're on a Zoom with people that you've met, you've spoken to, you've interacted with, you've got relatively comfortable with. When you're on an online Zoom, you may feel more comfortable to chime in because you know exactly who the audience is.
Yeah.
When you're tuning in for the first time and you may interact with these people, but you don't have that closeness. You don't have that sort of knowledge of them. I think it's more difficult to sort of ask questions or to maybe raise a controversial point for fear of what someone else may say.
Yeah, and I think and like I say, it might not even to you, it's probably not controversial, but then you don't know what everyone else is going to react like. Yeah. And you always want the opportunity to sort of explain your view as well, and maybe have a challenge if it's something that is unacceptable, which we come across. It happens. People have views that you don't agree with or that are outright against, like, say, the rules we set as a group when we do a session, which we always do. So I'm just going to quickly scroll back through the chat, make sure I haven't missed anyone. Sue's saying it's a good idea because sometimes you need some one-to-one support as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lynn's saying as well, there's that like aspect of she was referring to a cooking course and showing your kitchen, so like having a camera not just on you, which is for some people bad enough. I mean, like I say, I've been going through the YouTube videos today and I'm absolutely sick of seeing my face and hearing my voice. Like every time I hear it, it gets worse and more moaning and sort of whiny. But you've got a camera in your home sort of for at times a full day. And if you are doing something like a cooking course where they want to see your kitchen, it's not just on you anymore. It's literally invading your home sort of thing. So I think there's that aspect of it as well. You're always a little bit on edge. I feel you're not in a shared space. You're in your home, which, like you were saying, there's no boundary then, is there, between the classroom and your house? It becomes the same thing.
It's a little bit more invasive, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's a bit creepy, to be honest, when thinking about it like that. Yeah.
Different strokes, because I've got a former colleague and friend who he was on this years ago. I'm keen on tech, but he really embraced it. And he's got no sort of the right word, no qualms. He's quite comfortable being on camera.
Yeah.
And like I remember snow days being at the college way back when. And he would just jump on, webcam himself in his dining room. His kids are running around because they're off school as well, and he was fine with it. And I thought maybe that's just a little bit too personal. I don't mind someone having a shot of my office, but I don't necessarily need you to come and meet the family at the dining table.
Yeah, but that's like the classic interruption, isn't it? Where the kid comes running in and like ends up sitting on the knee. There's been a few videos kicking around online where the kids have come in and interrupted like a really important interview about like a poignant topic and they've just sort of like booted the door down and be like, hi, I'm here.
And then mum or dad in the background just running into trying to wrestle the kid just quietly.
You don't even see them, you just see the hand come out and just sort of like grab them by the back of the top and like pull them out, like, all right. Yeah, it's a classic. So you'll have that pretty soon once the baby's up and running, hopefully.
Got that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just being cried into the room.
Like I say, you end up playing. It's like Zoom bingo, where like you have the dog barks, the baby cries, or like there's a really loud motorbike goes past, and then I think that's it. You've got a row, and then you wait for the rest. So the guys are just singing our praises in the chat, which is nice. Cheers for that, guys. Sue's saying she sometimes feels a bit silly in a classroom as well because it takes a while to understand things, which I think is, on the flip side, a little bit. It's a funny one for me personally. That one, I don't know if if it's the same for you, Mike, when you were teaching, like it's a lot easier to explain something to someone face to face.
I'm going to choose my words carefully. When I was teaching, if there was someone who was lacking confidence, we use that phrase, lacking confidence, I find it really easy to sort of pull them aside or whatever, have a conversation, make them feel more comfortable. And I think that's something that is difficult to see online when your eyes are. I mean, we've just got a screen to look at each today. Like I'm looking at you, you're looking at me. If we have 30 of those on there,
it's small,
really
a tiny little window.
Just a tiny little window.
Yeah,
it's going to be really difficult to sort of identify where someone might not be engaged or might feel a bit uncomfortable, or what have you. So I think that's a challenge. I also think without the camera looking in, people take more risks. And there may be things like there's a lot of staff I know who are very, very funny and will incorporate humour into a session. And it's not saying anything particularly offensive or anything like that, but it's just a way to keep things lively. If in an hour and 2 hour session, keeps people going, retains information. You suddenly put a camera in the room and it's like, ooh, do I want a record of that? Do I want someone else who I can't see seeing that? And so it really does make you pause for thought. So I appreciate some people may feel somewhat uncomfortable in a classroom at times, but I think it's much easier to then have a one-to-one, have a chat with someone quietly without the world watching or without a camera there, which can sort of add to the...
Yeah, I think everyone gets that, like, sort of the tense, the rod at the back sort of thing when the camera goes on and everyone feels a little bit uptight.
That being said, and I think it's probably another good thing, because I hate being on camera. I'm trying not to look at myself. I apologise.
I've got my monitor set up so I can look off to the side and have to see my face.
Guys, I'm well aware of my appearance. I haven't been able to get to the gym or to a barber's in many, many months, right? So I'm trying to avoid looking. But that being said, because we've been forced at this online world, I'm much more comfortable being on camera because it's just had to happen.
Yeah.
And I think once you get over those sort of that initial sort of uneasiness, it's just like, oh, it's the same as making a phone call.
Yeah.
Like I would never use I've got Android, so I use WhatsApp video. I would never use that before, but now I'm rather make a phone call, I'll video call everyone to see them.
Yeah, I think that's one thing for me definitely now, because it's sort of back to what you alluded to, where everything takes a little bit longer. If I've got a problem with something now, I'm straight on the phone to them, whereas before I'd have been a little bit more, you know, like, oh, I'll just send them a message or whatever. But now I'm ringing them because it needs to be done now. Like, I need it in this minute. Normally it'd be turned around and they're there and I can ask them. But now everyone's all over the place, so I just need to quickly get that information. So yeah, definitely, I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So yeah. So Lynn's saying she wouldn't want to see anyone to see hers, but the people's bookshelves in the background are always quite interesting. To see what they've been reading and stuff, which is I think if you're gonna do a Zoom call, especially if it's like interviews or whatever, it might be nice to have a nice backdrop down, or get yourself a nice virtual background of some high.
I mean, I'm actually embarrassed. I've got comic book covers on the wall.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that actually. Is that is it like an original print, that one?
No, it's just like a copy.
Oh, cool. No, because I mean, my sister actually bought us some like the original, it printed on like metal. It's like aluminium sheet, I think, printed on them. She bought us some of them for my birthday. I think it's like the print of the number one, like the first edition, I think. Can't remember. She seemed to think it was pretty cool, and I was like, yeah, that's great.
I like comic books and things, but my friend bought us a comic book once. I've never collected them. I don't really read a couple of them. Not a huge fan. Like some of the characters in films, and she bought one, and I didn't see the significance, but it was a Spider-Man comic that was on the day that was printed on the day I was born. It's a first edition.
Right.
So that's actually quite cool, and that's sort of locked in a case somewhere.
And there's some real money in them as well, you know, like series collectors. It goes for thousands, like decent collections. But yeah, I've never really got into reading the comics either, sort of on purpose, because I know if I started, like, my sister reads the Walking Dead graphic novels, and there's so many of them, and I know if I start I won't be able to stop as well, so I'm going to end up spending all my time doing it. So I've sort of deliberately excluded myself from that that experience for now. Sue saying, don't worry about no gym or haircuts. I was on camera most of my teeth out. That's what you're saying there. So yeah, I think, like you say, a bit more comfortable. But I mean, we're coming from like myself and Daniel and Dan all come from sort of like a media production sort of
Mm.
background as well, which normally means you're behind the camera rather than in front of it. So anything in front of the camera, you're normally like, oh no, but you're starting to loosen up a little bit, which is nice. So I mean, we've talked about the education sector and a little bit more of an accessible approach and some of the implications it has, which I think is there's pros and cons to it, but you sort of alluded to it there. But have you had any? Have you got any interests or hobbies, or things you do to stay on top of your mental health and stuff outside of work to try and give you that boundary?
For the COVID thing, like I've missed seeing. There's a few things I missed, and I haven't been able to replace them all. So I've missed seeing my friends.
Yeah.
And particularly with the little one, we've had to be really selective about sort of who we're seeing, who's having contact with, because it's just frightening. So I've actually used Zoom. Like I suggested to my friend a couple of months ago. I'm putting weight on. I'm doing something. Why don't we get up on the morning before work? We both start work at the same time. Get on Zoom. I've got some exercise equipment here. He has, and we have like a virtual gym session, sort of 4 times a week. And that's been sort of really good, just to keep in touch, give her a reason. Because sometimes, I'm not sure if you found this on lockdown, but sometimes you contact people, you've got nothing to discuss because you've had no experience on the day. You haven't been out of the 4 doors, or if you have, you've been to a supermarket somewhere. So you want to keep in touch with people, but there's no reason. But actually, the gym has like sort of motivated me a little bit more, and I found that really useful.
Yeah.
I wish I could turn that into a business because I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The cheap version of Peloton.
Aye.
So I've found that useful, but I'm hoping the gyms and squash courts and things open up, and that's my sort of goal in the next week or two.
So you're a squash guy.
I am a squash guy.
Nice. I know Dan's had a go at squash, and Ian, one of the guests we had on, used to play as well. I haven't actually played it for about. I think I played it once when I was like 17. That was about it. It's pretty hard work, all right.
Oh yeah, I took my friend then, and I'm going to change what he said. This is not an exact quote; it's more effective. But he couldn't understand why I can beat him every time because he's much more physically fit than me.
Yeah,
he's in very, very good shape, and yet he's falling over the floor. He's panting. He's out of breath. It's because it is a game of skill as well as sort of reactions, and he really struggles. But in his head, he should be laughing at me, and he just can't work it out. So that's part of the reason I really enjoy it, because I like a bit of competition.
Yeah,
it drives him insane.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair enough. You get that, I think, all over the place with different sports where it's a lot of technique as well. I think specifically like Daniel talks about MMA quite often because he watches it quite a lot. I think that's another one, like boxing and the fighting sports, especially people go in there like because they're really big from doing weights and think that they're going to be amazing fighters, but it doesn't necessarily correlate. It's a lot more technique and commitment than just being, strong.
If you're a wrestler, like an American collegiate wrestler, you've got a good chance. I think anything else, if you've had no experience in fact, no, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, I think so. So is the UFC your sport of choice if you had to have one?
I'm a big MMA fan.
Okay. There's a decent card on this weekend, isn't there? I'm sure.
He's doing Fight Island, which I'm sort of against.
Yeah. No, I was saying to Daniel, it's a bit of a ridiculous concept to have it in. It's in the United Arab Emirates, right?
Yeah.
But then they're still having the fights to be like at US time.
Yeah, and he's also they're going to be at the Apex Center, which I think is in Las Vegas pretty soon. But it just frightens me because again, I know Peter's sick of it, but COVID, you're flying in people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And in Florida, where we're classed as an essential business.
Yeah.
And now it's just spiking through the roof. And I know it's not their fault entirely.
No.
But because nobody's staying home and they're not really distancing and they're opening up all these businesses, there's thousands of people who've got a virus and lots of them dying.
Yeah. Florida hasn't taken it seriously from the start, though, has it? It's been, I think it was like the first state to open back up, and the sort of declared like the WWE and the UFC like essential businesses, and it's just been a bit of a mess.
And don't get us wrong, I miss them. Do you know what I mean? I've got tickets
definitely.
I've got tickets to see WWE in Ireland in October,
Yeah.
which is looking a little bit sketchy. So I want them to be back. I've missed live music. There's a few of my favourite bands who've done sort of concerts behind closed doors and stream them on YouTube, and it's not the same.
Nah.
It doesn't work. You have to be there for that atmosphere. So I do miss them, but equally, it's like I'd rather everyone in that band survive and record another album.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of them things, isn't it? Like the football is a prime example. Like it doesn't really affect you watching it, I don't think, but it's just there's something about it. There's something missing, and especially like not being able to go to a game as well.
Well, for me, I'm really petty. My friend is a massive Liverpool fan.
Oh God, I bet you've had a great week, have you?
Well, I was praying for months that the season was going to be abandoned because we have this joke that Liverpool has never won a Premier League title, which is now no longer true. And I thought it would have been great if they just trounced the competition, had a fantastic season, but still weren't able to the trophy, and on a technicality, the season was abandoned. What you need
to be saying to them is it's always got an asterisk next to it. That's
it does. Yeah. We've had that conversation. Yeah. We've had that conversation.
A couple of my mates who support Liverpool get real angry, like really angry when you mention that it's going to have an asterisk next to it. When really, if they just said I don't care, that'll be the end of it. But it's the fact that they're so upset. Just a quick one from Lynn as well. She said she's seen that Mike Tyson's making a comeback apparently as well. I don't know if you saw that. He did announce.
He's facing Roy Jones Jr., isn't he? Yeah.
I think he's fifth. How old is Mike Tyson now? He's got to be like.
Is he 53 or 56?
50 something. I'm gonna have a quick look. To be fair to him, he looks in good, Nick. I definitely wouldn't want to take a punch from him right now.
Didn't George Foreman come back and win the world title in his 50s?
I think so, yeah, but I think he was like 45 when he did that.
Right, yeah.
So I think this is like another 10 years on that. But still, like I say, there's no way I'm letting Mike Tyson punches, but I don't know if the fight's going to be any good, Lynn, to be honest.
It's a freak show fight, isn't it? It's a curiosity.
I'll watch it. I'll definitely watch it. But
it was like when CM Punk went to the UFC.
Yeah.
We could have written that. We don't know that's how it's going to turn out, but we ordered that interview and watched it.
Yeah. I mean, the UFC's had a bit of a weird one as well, because didn't Brock Lesnar go over for ages and he was like really good, and then did he get caught for drugs?
He tested UFC 200. He tested for steroids or something, which he denied to the hilt. To be fair to Brock Lesnar, if you see a picture of him when he's 15 years old, he's the same size.
Yeah.
He's just a giant of a man.
Just an absolute animal, really.
And he denied it to the hilt, and he was saying it was a tainted supplement. And then Peter got bored with the story, and I think he ended up.
He went back to WWE, didn't he? I think
he did. Yeah, he's still there now.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Combat sport's weird. Like, if you believe some people that the cheating and the taking of like steroids and stuff is rife. Like, there's not a fighter out there who hasn't done it. If you believe some of the reports, but.
See, again, it's reading different things, because in the MMA world, it's USADA for UFC, isn't it? Who tests constantly.
Yeah.
And
it's VADA and what's the other one called in boxing? I can't remember. There's two, but it's a bit hit missy as well. The tests when you actually look at how they do it.
Yeah, and they're finding things that are like they're in supplements, they're in things I've taken, they're in vitamin tablets and things, and it's such a low percentage. There's no possible gain to it, and yet they're sanctioning people or suspending them for 2 years.
Yeah. Mike Tyson's fighting for his pension fundraiser. Apparently, that's what Sue reckons.
There's two sides to me. It's like the professional and the personal. It's like on the professional side, Mike Tyson shouldn't be taking that fight. He's been led astray somewhere. It was like the Chuck Liddell fight from a few months ago. It shouldn't really be happening.
You sort of feel bad in a way, don't you? Like, it's
sad.
Like, oh, no.
I watched the Chuck Liddell fight, and it was just not embarrassing is the wrong word. It's just like it was like car crash TV. I couldn't turn away.
I'm worried. Like I didn't watch it. I watched the highlights, but every time something happened, I was just like, oh no. Like I was getting further and further away from the screen. Like, oh no. Like expecting it to get just ended.
The sad thing for me was how in shape Tito Ortiz looked, and how away from it Chuck Liddell was. And I think, why is he taking this fight? And in a similar way, it's the Mike Tyson thing. It's like, why are you were one of the most successful and controversial boxers of all time. You've managed to make some money on the reality circuit and cameos.
He's got his own podcast as well now, Mike Tyson.
He's got his cartoon series. I watched it somewhere. So he's still licensing his name. He's still respected as a boxer, if not as a person. It's just like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you taking the risk in sort of the twilight? Not the twilight. He's in his 50. Oh, is he
54. He's 54.
54.
Yeah.
But still, if you can make money from something else and getting punched in the face, you're going to make money doing that.
Yeah. I think, to be fair, his thing is you listen to him after he retired and he's never really moved on. Like, he always talks about being a fighter and a warrior and stuff, and I think that if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. I don't know, I'm just a little bit, like I say, I'm worried for him. Dan's pointing out that Bernard Hopkins was the world champ at 48 as well, which there you go. I'm sure, was George Foreman came out of retirement? I don't know if he won.
He won the world title, he came back, and I think he retired as world champ, if I remember.
Yeah, so it left it vacant. 40, it was 40, yeah, he was 45, I thought so. When he defeated 26-year-old Michael Moura in the 10th round. Yeah, that rings a bell. The guy who he fought went in with a 35-0 record as well. He got knocked out by it. The thing is, he'd have been going into that fight thinking, I'm going to knock this old man out, and then he's been completely done.
He wouldn't have taken it seriously.
Yeah. It happens though. Happens in all walks of life. People don't take stuff
everyone in boxing has got a puncher's chance.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's what Joshua said about Ruiz, wasn't it?
Mm.
You know, that he just caught him in that fight, and that was it. Fair play. Some people would argue that's Deontay Wilder's whole thing. It's just wait until he can throw a big right hand. And Lynn saying that George Foreman did a nice line of grills for his retirement fund, so he doesn't need to come back.
And it was a better career for him. He made more money out of his grills than getting punched in the face for a living.
Well, exactly.
Mike Tyson needs to find a kitchen appliance that he can market.
Well, to be fair, I'm sure he's got his own brand of weed out. I'm sure, because it's like where he lives. Is it California he lives in? And it's legal to own like your own farm and stuff over there. I'm fairly sure he's got his own brand going. I'll not put it in the link on the video. We'll definitely get like some kind of community guideline strike against it.
According to The Hangover, he lives in Vegas.
Well, yeah, but he also owned. I think he genuinely owned a tiger, though, didn't he? Like that was a real.
Yeah, I think that was the joke, wasn't it? But this is what fighters do. I think Conor McGregor tried to buy a giraffe, didn't he, when he first won money?
I think Conor McGregor went a little bit off the rails though when after he brought out his whiskey, because didn't he tried to pour a glass of whiskey for that bloke in Ireland, and then he didn't want it, so he just punched him, and then the old bloke just sort of turned around and kept drinking his pint.
He lives in it's the world of celebrity. He lives in a different world where there's no consequences for your actions.
Of course, he smash up buses, he can do what he wants.
Yeah,
good lad. He's funny if nothing else. I'll give him that. He is funny.
I've ordered the first boxing pay-per-view in years because he was on the card. He was facing.
That was a good fight. To be fair to him as well, that was a good fight. I enjoyed that one as an exhibition. Probably one of the best.
It was the only boxing match my wife watched, and she actually appreciated how technical it was because Floyd Mayweather's smooth as silk.
Yeah,
and he's playing he's playing human chess.
Aye.
He really is, and she didn't sort of realize. She just thought it's going to be like a pure UFC match with people beating the hell out of each other. Von Fry and Yakanama, and she saw those two and he knew that was coming. He moved out the way a second before he threw the punch. I was like, he's looking for all these sort of cues.
He's not one pay-per-view wise. If you don't really like boxing, he's not one to watch. Because he is really defensive, but he's the best that there's probably ever been at defensive boxing.
I think if you change your mindset from wanting the knockouts and the things, if you really just look at him, it's like how many years has he studied this? His discipline? Just get his promotion away, his mouth away from it. Actually, he's incredibly good at reading people, and I think that's quite impressive.
It's the consistency over that many fights to be that good at not getting punched. Because like you say, everyone's got a puncher's chance. You'd think, Sod's Law would dictate that one of the fights he's going to get knocked out, and he just
especially when he's 51 now.
Yeah, 51-0, so incredible. Don't particularly think he's like a nice guy or anything, but
no, definitely not.
He's just.
But again, he's another person who makes his money punching people in the face for a living. There's very few nice guys out there who do that.
Definitely, I think that's the draw for the UFC for me. Like I'm not massively into it, but I do watch the bigger cards. But I think the draw is there's so many different styles of fighters. I find it really, really interesting.
I'm looking for the guy's name now. I can't think of him. There's a guy there. He's a young lad, and he calls Dana White Mr. White.
Right.
I can't remember what his name is. It's going to drive the screen. I was watching him the other day, and he's the most polite person in the world, and he's one of the few people who treat it just as a sport. It's just, I turn up. This is something we do as a athletic competition. There's no
Yeah.
malice, there's no bad blood, and goes in.
I
Although
like.
GSP's
Right. Okay. Yeah. I like. Speaking of Mike Tyson, actually, on the podcast, Francis Ngannou was on it not long ago.
yeah.
He seems like a really nice guy, and then you see him have a fight, and you're like, don't want to meet this dude ever. Like, he's just an absolute machine. It's just brutal.
I saw him for Stipe, and
Yeah, like
hats off to Stipe. Is not the greatest of all time. Hats off to him, because Ngannou looked like he killed him on 2 separate occasions.
yeah, just throwing absolute like just haymakers constantly. That you just, how do you defend them? Like, crazy. Right, yeah. I mean, the guys. I think everyone's had a question in for Mike that we've answered, and we've covered quite a few topics today. Actually, we've managed to go into sport, as you can tell.
Sorry for evolving in the combat sports. Hit him hitting a. He had no idea I'm a massive fan.
Just opened the door and there it was. But no, I appreciate that. I'm sure Daniel will be buzzing as well, because he's like massively into MMA as well. And just on the combat sports note, your gym sessions, if you just pan your camera to your left a little bit, is it your left or your right? Yeah, you've got the boxing bag set up there as well. So that's been what you've been doing your gym sessions on, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
So we're gonna
to the annoyance of my neighbours.
Yeah, 6 a.m.'s a bit like early, man. That's a bit like hardcore. That.
It's because I start work probably like 7, half 7, something like that.
Yeah. So you're a morning guy for the training. You see, there's two sets, and I think everyone at the office is like later trainers. I couldn't get myself out of bed at 6 in the morning to do a boxing session. Like, it's too heavy going. I tend to like sit all day first.
But I've got a little one who's my alarm clock, so
well, yeah,
out night. So it's make a bottle up, make a barocca for myself.
Yeah.
In fed and then upstairs. Doing
like bicep curls with the baby, just and then swap arms, and then there you go, sorted. Keeps them entertained, keeps you fit. No, mate, really appreciate you coming on, and appreciate you answering the questions for the guys, and where you see the FACL stuff going as well. I've left a link in the description just for more information for anyone who's not one of our regular learners, just to facl.org.uk, just for people to grab some information off it. You guys have Facebook and use Facebook, don't you? Or is that not?
I don't personally use it, but we'll have a Facebook page for them.
I'll drop that in there as well. I think that puts out some updates and all. So yeah, cheers guys. Appreciate that, and thanks again, Mike, for coming along and having a chat about everything.
Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Appreciate it. So guys, I'm going to stick the screen on with all the helpful information on, and all the helplines and stuff, and then I'll leave that on for a few minutes, and I'll be monitoring the chat for the rest of that. So yeah, cheers, and I'll see you guys on Monday.
Nice. Cheerio.
See you, Mike.